Are you okay?
What are you two doing?
Hi, Reagan. How you doing, buddy?
The library's unlocked if anybody needs to get in.
Thank you, Robin.
Give her a hand.
We could go inside if you want to.
All right, anyway. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, we welcome you out. We're gonna have a good day. It's only 50, I mean, it's at least 56 degrees, so it's warming up. So. Anyway, it'll be 72 over at Meadow at noon. So, anyway, we welcome you, and we'll enjoy the day. I don't know how many of you know Kendall Hinton, Kendall Wayne or Wayne Kendall. I can't remember which. Wayne Kendall. He's always been Kendall to me, so it's hard to bring in Wayne at all. But he's one of my cousins, and grew up in Hurricane. And went to Utah State. I don't know where you got your PhD.
BYU. Postdoc at University of California.
I'm going to have him tell us a little bit about himself. I can't remember that long. So. Anyway, we're glad to have Kendall with us for today. He's got a lot of knowledge on the historical areas that we're going to be visiting today. So I'll turn it over to him. After he gives a presentation, we'll go down through this gate here, and there's monuments in here that you can go and read. And they cleaned it up. Brad was in charge of getting the cleanup up here for the county and did a great job. So let's give him a hand because it made a difference. Anyway, you can go in there, and at 9:30, that's about 45 minutes from now. About 20 till 10, we're going to leave here, and we'll go down to the Wildlife Museum down on the south end of New Harmony, down the creek, and we'll be there by 10. There's a parking lot there at the lodge. She said it'll hold up about 10 cars. There's a house, a big house just to the west of it, that my son-in-law's brother owns that house, and so we can park it there.
Get you all this.
So you can't get into the lodge when you drive in. Just turn right and then immediately left and another gate there with the parking lot there. So we'll be there at 10 o'clock. Make sure before we leave here at 9:40 that you go to the restroom, because I'm not sure about restroom availability at the lodge. And so the next stop for restrooms will be at Pinto, which is going to be at noon. So anyway, there's sagebrush and trees along the way.
Well, and cold air always makes it happen.
Anyway, we welcome Kendall. We'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, David. I went to the BYU football game Saturday, and I had the worst injury of anybody. Tore up my knees, so I'm not going to do much walking. Welcome. This is the site of Fort Harmony. Preceding this site, John D. Lee, who had been sent to Parowan in December of 1850, had gone back to Salt Lake in the fall of 1851 to sell his property and bring the rest of his family. John D. Lee at one time had 19 wives.
Oh, wow.
Brigham Young said he could eat more eggs and beget more children than any man in all of it. While he was in Salt Lake, the October conference, semi-annual conference, was held. And on the 6th of October, Brigham Young called John D. Lee to establish a new community south of Parowan and south of Cedar. Cedar was being established in November of 1851. He tried to get some of his neighbors and friends to go with him. Not many were very interested. He finally left Salt Lake with 19 wagons. And they decided that they would settle about where the Ash Creek Reservoir that's dry was established. They freighted 50 loads of lumber from Parowan, and they built a lumber fort. John D. Lee, Elisha Groves, Richard Woolsey, and William Reed Davis did most of the work on building that fort. And by February of 1852, they pretty well had that fort finished. The purpose of the fort was to raise food to supply the mill workers and the miners in the Iron Mission, and also to feed the anticipated missionaries to the southern Utah Indians. And in the April conference of 1854, Brigham Young called 23 men under Rufus C. Allen to come down and establish that southern mission. In May of 1854, Brigham Young came down and surveyed the new fort they'd built there, and he said it's in the wrong place. It's they had begun farming. They had 160 acres under cultivation. Brigham Young said, you can't raise enough food here to fulfill your purpose, and it's susceptible to flooding. So Brigham Young and his party rode 4 miles to the north, picked this site where the Canara Creek and the Harmony Creek could be used for cultivation, where there's this big broad valley that you can see here that they could form. It's also elevated where the fort site is, which made the fort better. So on May 20th of 1854, Brigham Young turned over the first shovel full of dirt down on the southeast corner of this fort. They waited till 11 a.m. At 11 a.m. he turned over that first shovel full of dirt. Now, since the fort 4 miles to the south was built of lumber, they could salvage all of that material, so there's nothing left of what they call Harmony. They named it Harmony after Harmony, Pennsylvania. Some of you probably have been to Harmony, to the church historical site there. That's where much of the translation of the Book of Mormon took place. It's where the Aaronic priesthood was restored on the Susquehanna River just outside of Harmony. So they named that fort Harmony, or that first settlement Harmony. When they moved, when they moved up here, they called this Fort Harmony. So people had first settled in 1852. In 1854, they began construction of this fort. It was 300 feet wide and 300 feet long. The wall on the west side was 16 feet high. The other 3 walls were 11 feet high. The houses on the west were 2 stories. All the others were 1 story. That meant that the men with plural wives and the leaders lived on the west side, and everybody else lived either on the north, south, or east side. They dug a well that went down 100 feet in the center of the fort, and by February of 1855 they pretty well had it complete. On March 2nd of 1852, this territorial legislature established Washington County. And in January 4th of 1836, 32 men from Fort Harmony petitioned to have Fort Harmony be the county seat of Washington County. So from January of 1856 to 1859, this fort, the settlement here, was the county seat of Washington County till they moved it to Washington City in 1859. There were some problems that arose here. By 1860, there were some people that thought they had to move closer to the head of Canara Creek and closer to the head of Ash Creek. So in June of 1860, some of the people left here and established Canaraville with help of some people that were leaving from Cedar. After the Mountain Meadow Massacre in 1859, Brigham Young dissolved the Cedar City, Utah stake. That stake was organized in 1856 with Isaac C. Haight as stake president, and William Rees Davis was the bishop. There was a ward here, the Fort Harmony Ward, and that ward was dissolved. And ironically, John D. Lee was appointed as the presiding elder after the ward was dissolved here. I'm sure Brigham Young didn't know exactly how big a role he played in the Mount Meadow Massacre. John D. Lee was appointed on January 1st of 1856 to be the Indian agent in the southern Utah environs. That's what his appointment said, southern Utah environs. And that's the thing that put him so much in the center of the Mountain Meadow Massacre.
What was that word? Environs?
What?
Environs? What was that word?
In the environs of southern Utah. That meant Pinto, Santa Clara, Cedar City Bend, and Paiutes.
Tokerville? Ventura, yeah.
Well, some of the people then had moved away in 1860, June of 1860, to establish Canaraville. Even before the storms that began in December of 1861, people were beginning to build homes in what is now New Harmony, 5 miles to the west of us. Even John D. Lee had begun building a home there. By the way, when Washington County was established, John D. Lee was the probate judge and the county assessor. Fort Harmony was sort of on a main travel route. There wasn't a road over the Black Ridge. Peter Schertz was assigned to go find a road, and the reason we have Peter's Leap is because when he came back and said he found a route, and they said, "How are you going to get across that chasm?" And he said, "Leap it." So it's called Peter's Leap. And some of you probably have hunted deer in that area. You know how deep that is and what a task that would be to leap it. Then in 1860, January 20th of 1860, there was a 6.0 earthquake, and it began to crack the walls of the fort. Besides that, they had built, the foundation is rock. The foundation is about 3 feet thick, and the walls were from 3 feet to 18 inches at the top. The walls were built of adobe brick. The problem with that was they didn't use any straw or horsehair, and so it made the brick so that it would dissolve. On the 23rd of December, it began to rain. 23rd of December, 1861. It rained and rained and rained, and by January 4th, it began to snow. And pretty soon there was 8 inches of snow on top of the super saturated ground, and the brick was beginning to dissolve. About the 11th of January, people began to prepare to move from the fort. It was said that John D. Lee didn't take off his wet clothes for 7 days. By January 11th, in some places in the fort, the water was 3 feet deep. On the 28th of January, they saw the sun for the first time in over a month. Then it began to snow again. And by February 4th, there were 10 inches of snow on the ground here at this fort. Everyone had been moved out except Sarah Ann Lee and her children. John D. Lee was led out in moving those people. They used 3 big wagons. They had to put 8 yoke of oxen on each wagon. It was said that the axles dragged the ground as they moved from here over to New Harmony. Those poor people lived in wagon boxes. They stretched canvas over the top of the wagon boxes. They had to park the wagons on planks so that they wouldn't sink into the mud. Well, Sarah Caroline Lee had stayed here at the fort because she had a loom project going. She was planning to leave on February 7th. The night of February 6th, a big gust of wind came up and blew the wall in. It caved to the bottom floor. They had a 2-story house here. It caved to the bottom floor, killed her daughter, Margaret, 5 years old, and her son, George Albert Lee, who was 7 years old. She was the last person to leave from the fort by February of 1862. This place was evacuated. Excuse me. Was evacuated, and most of the people were in New Harmony. Now, they had lost a lot of population. It gradually began to grow back because Washington had been settled. Washington, Utah, 1861, St. George was settled. People down there saw potential at New Harmony because of the cooler weather, the closeness to timber, good water sources from the 3 creeks that flowed here. They did dig a ditch from Ash Creek to add additional water for the fort. In 1936, the Utah Trails and Landmark Association piled rocks to mark the corners of this fort. So when you walk through there, you can see where the corners are. In 2007 and 2011, at the request of the Fort Harmony Historical Association, BYU and the Utah State Historical Society began some excavation here. They haven't done anything since 2011 when Karen Platt died. In 2015, the Fort Harmony Historical Association pretty much disbanded, so they haven't done anything since. But they did find some valuable things when they were doing the excavation. After this fort was abandoned, Andrew G. Smoot's homesteaded 640 acres. This property technically still belongs to the Smoot's family, and the farming around it, 640 acres, belongs to the Smoot family, but they've made it available to the public. So as you go through the fort, respect the fact that they have made it available to us. David had been asking about the kiln at New Harmony. It's a lime kiln. It was established either in the fall of 1861 or early 1862. We have records that say that John D. Lee used the mortar from the lime kiln for the mortar on his brick home. And most of those new homes that were being built in 1862 in New Harmony were made of brick. Lime was used for plaster. They used it to whitewash walls. They used it for cleaning. They also mixed it in the soil to, as they said, sweeten the soil. I'm not sure what sweeten means.
Break up the clay.
Pardon me?
Break up the clay.
Okay. Yeah, if your soil is too clay, like it is in Cedar City, you want to mix sand and lime with it. Any questions? Now, there was no fighting here. There weren't problems with the Paiute Indians. During the Black Hawk War, however, and Brigadier General Erastus Snow and Captain James Andrus did training just east of New Harmony. There's a plaque over by the cemetery. They had 500 men that lived in tents. The Black Hawk War started in 1866, and as Johnston's army was coming to Utah in 1857, the Nauvoo Legion was reorganized into 13 military districts, and this was the 9th military district, Beaver, Iron, and Washington counties. And the people from the southern part of the 9th military district did their training on the flat just east of New Harmony. So during those training times, there were 500 men living there in tents. And that's what that plaque over by the cemetery is all about.
I had a question about the storms that took the fort down. It seems like that was about the same time that people started to settle St. George.
They began settling St. George December 1861.
So that was the same storm.
Yeah.
We need another one of those, maybe.
Yeah, we could use one.
I don't want to live in a box.
Yeah, go ahead.
How many of you know if you're related or not to any of the people that Wayne has talked about? Have you studied and researched? My mother's a second great granddaughter of John D. Lee through Agatha Ann Woolsey.
Proud.
She's part of those eggs that he was talking about.
Yeah.
We all like eggs for some reason.
John D. Lee had the biggest home here at the fort, and they charged travelers 31 cents a meal, and they charged 31 cents a night per head of livestock that they fed. It was said that sometimes John D. Lee took in as much as $20 a night from travelers that they took here.
The wives fed him eggs.
One thing I've observed about New Harmony is the wind blows about 99% of the time, and it pretty much blows the other 1% too.
Well, it blows 100% of the time in Cedar.
From the south, though.
When the pioneers
From the
came
south.
through, they said, "This looks like a good place to camp. We'll stay here till the wind stops."
A lot of years ago, I went on a ride from Smith's Mesa with some friends, and we rode to a cabin that John D. Lee had up there.
Yeah, up at Lee's Pass.
About a month ago, I went and tried to find that cabin, and I couldn't find it. I think it's gone.
No,
To the spot, but
the foundation's still
I asked
there.
them, I said, "Is that really John D. Lee's cabin?" And they swore up and down it was. Have you heard anything of that?
I've been to
Well,
it.
in
I've been to
1859, Judge Jacob Cradlebaugh tried to use the military, Johnston's army that was stationed at Camp Floyd, to arrest people that he thought were part of the Mountain Meadow Massacre. And John D. Lee, Isaac C. Haight, William Stewart, Joel White, Philip Clinging-Smith, 5 or 6 men went into seclusion. They fled, fearing they might be arrested by the military. So John D. Lee went to the east, up in what is called Lee's Pass, and that's where he remained as a fugitive for a time. And of course, later he was sent down to establish Lee's Ferry, the only place between Needles, California, and Mexico where you could cross the Colorado River with wagons.
No, the cabin though is clear over And there must have been a road because it's clear over closer to Smith's Mesa. You
Yes, it
have
is.
to-
You can ride the horses right off Smith Mesa to it. I did it with
I tried doing that a
Gil-
month ago. And I couldn't
Gilbert
find
Reeve
it.
and John Wadsworth. I did it with them.
Well,
Did it before.
15
Bud
years
Bauer
ago.
owns some property on Kolob Mountain. From his property on Kolob, you could see the St. George Temple on a clear day. And there's a trail that goes from there that comes down to Grapevine Springs to Lee's Pass. It's 24 miles. I hiked it once. When I got home, I told my wife, "Don't touch me. Draw a bath full of water as hot as you can and leave me alone."
A lot of ticks on you, huh?
Anything else?
I'm just curious, is that a trek that we could actually go on to go see where Lee's Pass is and stuff, or is it,
You're
you have
not-
to do horses?
Yeah, you'd have to do horses.
Okay, that's not feasible.
Well, you can walk it.
I learned from you, I don't wanna do that.
Okay, we'll go ahead now and go down through the gate, and there's several monuments in the pass. We want to be out in our cars about 20 to 10. So when you come out, you gotta use the restroom, go in the library, use the restroom.
From John Wadsworth's place. Cut up through Cottoms.
We did that. I couldn't not go out to.
It's just logs on top of each other.
I don't even think that was.
It might have been water. It was right in the mouth of the water.
Yeah, but it was not really. Yeah. It's rough. It's not something you can do.
No.
Right up your alley.
Yep.
Good.
Alan thought that it was like 15 minutes, he's a little wrong.
Hey, no.
First time ever though.
You been here?
Pardon? No, I've been. It's the first time I'm saying first time you
You want to take this from me and kind of video? It's on video. Zoom out on this.
What do you want? Video, just people?
What?
Just people or?
Over in the fort. I was going to tell everybody how this kind of came to happen, this cleanup project. Wait till everybody kind of gets over here.
You did a great job on the trail there.
The tumbleweeds were literally 5 feet up to my chest high in this whole area about 4 weeks ago. And a guy named Larson, I can't remember what his name is, first name is, contacted me from New Harmony and wanted to do this little rock trail from the library down to the gate. Didn't say anything about doing anything else in here. I came up and met with him, and we decided to go ahead and just clean up the whole fort. Knowing that we were going to potentially do this trek today, kind of was my motivating factor too. But also, the county decided to get behind us, and they paid for 2 loads of this chat that we put down. Bryce Christensen Excavating donated 2 more loads, so he helped out a lot. And the Larson guy brought in all these little rocks to make this trail down. We also cleaned up the monument rock out here that Eagle Scout put in for an Eagle Scout project. And we reposted the 3rd post that had fallen down in here. It's shorter now, it should be. spent about 3 days up here really cleaning up. Several members of the SUP came up, David, Steve, Wilcock, and Brian Hidden came up, helped me do a lot of weed eating. We had the prison inmate crew come up for a day, and they really did a great job. So glad we were able to do such a good job cleaning up, and hopefully we can try to keep it this way and nice so that people can walk in from the library, read the monuments, and learn a little bit about the history of the area.
I didn't even know that.
A lot of people didn't know it was here. The weeds were literally halfway up the fence, clear almost up to the top. You couldn't even walk out here 4 weeks ago.
Thank you. Glad you told us, I would appreciate it. So were these
So
were
there's a monument here, there's a monument in the middle over here.
the cornerstones.
Cornerstones were already here, yes, they're all still here. So this is 300 feet from corner to corner each way. There's a cistern out here where they've had their drinking water. That's what the big hole you see in the bottom. That's where that we told us about. About 10 feet south of the monument up there, there's a box buried in the ground with some artifacts. And the lid is decomposed. It's just a tote. It's a plastic tote. I'm hoping to find some kind of a concrete box to come up and rebury the artifacts in it. But the lid's broken here, and as soon as we get a big rainstorm, it would flood it out. So we're hoping to find a good concrete box of some kind. Been told Schultz used to sell them. We checked up there, and they said they didn't have them anymore. No. So we're checking around a little bit and seeing what we can find. But just a little bit past, in fact, it's right underneath that bench, just the south side of that monument. There's a box buried in the ground with a bunch of artifacts. Collected up.
The mark?
I don't. They say there's pottery and a few other things. There might even be some bones. I don't know.
Bones sound good.
After all the hard work you did, it's great.
It's a snake. I don't know. Is it frozen?
We had one in our come by our front door. It would come like for 3 days in a row. It wasn't a rattler or anything, but and then it would go in our bush and we couldn't find where it went. It's weird.
Where the well was for the fort, inside the fort walls. Big deep depression of water.
It's frozen.
Yeah. Sister said there was a snake on the trail over there.
Kick it off.
You see it?
See the by the there's like a mat just to the right of that.
Are you freezing?
No.
Down about a snake that's over there.
They just hit.
I'll get it.
I wonder where the bell went. It was hanging on that.
I know.
There was a bell, I think, on that.
It must have been.
So they buried it in that tote. Lid decomposed.
How old is it?
That's where the toad is, right there. I'd never
hold it
heard
till
that it was
you-
100 feet deep. I always assumed it must have water coming out that walk right there and over into the cistern. It's actually 300. Yeah. Yeah, one of them is inaccurate. One of them is inaccurate.
We're gonna go to the other one.
It's on video, but
It doesn't look like those over there.
Maybe that snake is dead.
When they built this library and
Boom.
Well, this was awesome. I didn't even know this place. I didn't either. I did such a good job of cleaning it all up. Yeah, and mowed it down and everything was like.
Well, what's interesting is if it would have been me and I built a fort somewhere like over there farther, like the first one they built, and then he came down and said, "This is the wrong place." I said, "Well, goodbye." I mean, can you imagine building a fort and then telling them you got to move it? You got to.
That would not be good.
Oh, John D. Lee was a lot better person than I was. I'd say, build your own darn fort. And then they leave after they tell them it's in the wrong place. They leave and tell them to build another. Oh. That's when I said, send down the army, let them build it. Send down the troops. Look at this side. That's a grinding stone. That's an Indian grinding stone.
Looks like it, huh?
These are not the Matadi rocks, but that might be. Kathy, there's a grinding stone right here. See this Indian
Somebody
grinding
kicked
stone?
it off there, babe.
What's that?
There was a snake, a dead snake on the trail.
Oh, was it? Well, what kind was it? Get Brad's jacket when we get in. Why? I'll take Brad's jacket and you take this. Because this is just light. It's good though, because the breeze, it keeps the breeze off. But by the next place, I don't think it'll be.
I'm gonna pause this.